Hello and welcome back to another one of our InfoPod videos on Kenpo self-defense techniques. My name is Andy Seetherton, and in this video we'll be taking a look at the technique Reversing Mace. Now some of you may already be aware that this technique is related to one of our other techniques called Repeating Mace. If you haven't viewed our video on Repeating Mace as yet, I would strongly suggest you view that video in conjunction with this one, as a lot of the information is interchangeable. Now before we progress into the video, unfortunately at certain points during the video some of the dialogue breaks up. It's due to a loose connection in one of our microphones. It doesn't detract from the information, and I'm pretty sure you'll be able to understand the principles that we're getting at, but just be aware that there will be a little bit of a breakup in the sound. So we're going to look at this video now on a move for move basis without a partner as usual, then break down part of it, then we're going to have a little bit of a segue talking about some of the principles that we deem important to know and practice with this technique. Then we'll continue to the extension and have a look at some variations. So let's get into Reversing Mace. The prescribed attack for this technique is a step-through straight punch. However, at Combat Fusion Martial Arts, we initially trained this technique against a shuffle lead arm jab. It is advisable to train with both of these attacks and additional variations such as a reverse or cross punch as well. In the base technique, our opponent line of attack intersects the center of our body. Our initial movement involves removing our rear leg from this line of attack. This will subsequently remove our body as well. This maneuver places our new line of attack running through our opponent's original one, but from his rear. Simultaneously with the stepping off of our opponent's line of attack, we deliver a lead hand inward parry to our opponent's attacking arm. This inward parry continues its motion, riding and slightly deflecting the incoming attack. As it reaches the limit of its effectiveness, our rear arm commences an outward parry to the same attacking limb, this being a double block. The outward parry finishes on top of our opponent's arm, palm up in a waiter check position. The movement of the outward parry allows the inward parry to reverse its direction of travel, ending by delivering an outward hammer fist to our opponent's leading side floating rib. This is how Reversing Mace receives its name. The initial parry reverses its direction to deliver a mace to our opponent's ribs, mace being the Kenpo terminology for the fist. Our opponent's reaction to this strike causes him to bend forward at the waist and increase the bend in his knees. Now follow up by delivering an inward downward looping roundhouse kick, tracking along the rear angle of our opponent's lead thigh and impacting the rear of his leading knee. The resulting reaction causes our opponent to kneel on his lead leg. So now we're going to look at the principle of action versus reaction. This allows us to circumvent the usual saying that action beats reaction. Mr. Parker explained there is a way to use our reaction to move faster than our opponent's initial action of striking us. He explained this through a parable, and many of the stories he used to tell to help understand the principles, and this one was known as the 50-cent fan. The basic story of it was a salesman had been for a business meeting in San Francisco, and he wanted to get a present for his daughter before he went back to his hometown. So he was looking around Chinatown and he came across this small Chinese shop that sold lots of beautiful objects, and he was having a look round and he found these beautiful lace fans. So he decided to buy one, and they were only 50 cents, so he bought one of these fans and took it home and gave it to his daughter, and she loved it. She used it every day for a week, but unfortunately at the end of the week that fan had fallen to pieces. So knowing he was back in San Francisco the following week for another business meeting, he thought he would take it back to the shop and confront the owner. So after his business meeting the following week, he went back to the Chinese shop and spoke to the proprietor and explained that the fan had fallen apart with his daughter using it. And the proprietor said, "May I ask you, sir, how much did you pay for the fan?" And he said, "I paid 50 cents. And he said, "I see where the problem is." He said, "If you have a $1 fan, you're able to use the fan like this." He said, "But however, if you have a 50 cents fan, you have to hold the fan still and shake your head from side to side like that." Now, we use that in Reversing Mace to allow us to beat the action of our opponent's initial strike. And I'm going to use my partner Mark now to, Mark, can you just put that to the side, please? Okay, Mark. Okay, so from here, Mark's going to do the initial attack, which is a shuffle forward jab to my face. So if he shuffles forwards and makes contact, okay, bang. This is what I'm trying to avoid, obviously. Now, there's two things working against me here. The fact is I don't know when he's going to attack. So my eyes have to see the attack, then tell my brain to initiate a defense. And in that time lag, the fist could potentially hit me in the face. The other problem I've got is that the direction of Mark's punch is directly towards my central vision. Now, as humans and most mammals, central movement towards the central vision this way is very hard for us to pick up. We're better with movement across our vision than we are movement coming straight towards us. So I have to deal with the time lag plus the fact that I have trouble picking up that movement towards me. So things are working against me. However, if we use the principle of the fan, if I use a $1 fan, in that sense, when Mark throws his punch, I'm trying to move my block in to defend against the attack. I'm relying on my picking up of his actions quicker. So this is where I could end up being hit. However, if I keep my hand still, and my body being the head in the story of the 50 cents fan, as he punches, I move my body out of the way and keep the fan still. So the principle of this is the last thing to be hit needs to be the first thing moved out of the way. However, we can also apply a little bit of the $1 fan in conjunction with the 50 cent fan. And that happens like this. I can still, as Mark throws his punch, I can still use a parry movement or a block movement to create a slight angle of deflection. And then if I couple that with my foot movement out the way here, so I take my body out of alignment, that's a slight angle of departure. So coupling the slight angle of deflection with a slight angle of departure, it gives us a greater margin for error. Coupled to that, I'm also trying to get Mark to punch me in a certain area. Because when I stand in front of Mark, I'm not standing in a guard stance like this, giving away my knowledge that I've got a fighting skill. I'm standing in what we can term as a hidden fighting stance. I'm basically in a neutral bow, but I've got my hands up trying to calm the situation down. But you'll note my hands are making 1/2 of a rectangular frame. Okay, if you think I'm framing my head, my hands are making 1/2 of that rectangular frame. So I'm giving Mark the option of punching here. I don't know for a fact that's where he's going to attack, but I've got a generalized idea this is where he's likely to punch. And so I'm working on generalizations, which are helpful but not guarantees. So when I'm framing, I've got the framing, so I've got an idea where Mark's going to be landing the punch. I then use this slight angle of deflection, which is the $1 fan, coupled to a slight angle of departure, which is the 50 cent fan, and that ends up giving me the greater margin for error, which allows me to move out of the way of the strike. Okay, thanks, Mark. So those principles are what we teach in Reversing Mace, and it's a little segue here for you to think about some of the movements within the technique yourself.
We will now proceed on to the extension to Reversing Mace. If you do not require it at your stage of training, you may wish to bypass the next section of this video. From the downward looping roundhouse kick, drag step behind your opponent and immediately deliver a lead blade kick to the knee of his rear leg, causing him now to kneel on both knees. Continue with this directionally harmonious movement as you flow into a rear twist stance and simultaneously deliver a lead arm downward hammer fist to your opponent's sternum,
impacting as you settle into your stance. Immediately pivot out, untwisting from your stance, and deliver an outward elbow to your opponent's mastoid process if in range. On completing the pivot, step out into a neutral bow towards your opponent and execute an outward hammer fist to his jaw hinge. Immediately after contacting with the hammer fist, pivot into a forward bow, impacting his upper spine with a reverse punch. Continue this directional harmony by now delivering a rear leg knee to your opponent's lower spine. From the knee to the spine, drop with marriage of gravity into a front crossover, impacting your opponent's heel and Achilles tendon with a front crossover stomp. From this point, cover out.
Hello and welcome back. So now we're going to take a look at those variations. We've got 4 to study today, and these variations will be staying within the base move of the technique, basically within the opening strike and initial defense. They're a little bit exotic in places, but I hope you'll enjoy the different type of thinking involved. So let's get into the variations. So now we're going to look at some of the variations we work when we're training with reversing mace. So I'll bring my partner Gavin in. Okay, so in this first variation, Gavin's going to be working the standard attack, which is obviously we're using a shuffle jab to the face. This is what he's trying to achieve. I'm going to do the standard defense of the reversing mace itself. So as he throws the punch, I'm moving the last thing to be hit out of the way, reversing the mace and aiming to hit him into the floating rib here to cause the reaction of him doubling up in preparation for the kick to the back of the leg. But here in this case, as he throws the punch, excuse me, as he throws the punch, this doesn't have the desired effect. So his natural reaction now is to use his opposite hand to throw a punch across and catch me this manner by using a reverse punch or a cross punch. As he does the attack here, my hand up here, which is the Chinese waiter controlling this arm, takes over the defense, and as he throws his punch, I do a parry to that arm, taking it past my head, and then my striking arm comes up, and we are actually repeating the same action, but on the opposite side of his body. Whilst we're still on the same side, we're actually attacking the opposite side of his body, so he's twisted. So that is a potential defense as well. You could work simply from here, 1, as he throws the punch, 2, and then you could work just a hammer fist to the floating rib here, working him this way, and as you can see, his body's completely twisted. And that's what we want to work on. So as he throws his punch here, the desired effect isn't achieved. He throws his cross. As he does his cross, we parry and move his body offline and out of posture, which allows us just to take his leg out and then take him to the floor. Okay, so from this angle, you should see a slightly different viewpoint. As Gavin throws the punch, here's my movement here, taking the parry and driving in the hammer fist to the ribs. Now, again, this hasn't caused the desired effect, and as he throws his punch and cross, there's the crossing movement, and I'm using the same action again on the opposite side of his body whilst I'm still on the same side as I was before. So I'm just doing a reversing mace on the outside of his body. And here, his posture's compromised, and you can see where my foot is, it's already behind the lead leg. So whilst he's being taken that way, all I do is take a sweep here, and he falls in to the floor quite easily. Be careful with that one because your partner is twisted. He's leaning one way and you're taking his foot the other, so it's a very difficult sweep to fall safely from. But we'll do it one more time just to show you. So from here, as he throws his jab, 1, he throws his punch, 2, and he goes quite happily to the floor. So now we're going to another one, and this one is a same basic movement, but at the point of hammer fist, instead of our partner throwing a cross punch, he's trying to grab our striking hand to control it. Okay, so on the open side, you'll see I'm here in the standard position. As Luke throws his punch, I do the standard defense and hit to the target. But here Luke grabs at my wrist. Now, I'm not going to try and pull, like I might be able to achieve it, but what I'm going to work on, if we turn here, is I'm going to work my elbow in this manner. So my elbow's working on its strongest angle. I bring my arm back into myself and drop my elbow up, so my hand now comes up onto the top of my partner's forearm. Sorry, to the top of my partner's bicep. From there,
all I do is keep hold of the other arm, and I just now work something like crossing talons by taking him to the floor this manner. Or if I want to go into the yellow belt. So again, here's the jab, there's my movement out of the way, there's a strike, he grabs, moves, take him to the floor, punch, and move out. All right, just one more time from this side so you can see. Standard defense. One, he grabs, there's the anchor, there's the track to the arm, and from the track to the arm, there's the defense down, chamber, punch to the head, cover out. Now we're going to move on to the next variation, but we're still sticking with our opponent grabbing to our wrist. Now here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make our opponent come towards me and draw him through, make him step towards me, very similar as we do in the technique twirling hammers, but it's from the front instead of the rear. Okay, so Gavin. So starting again, Gavin throws the initial attack, there's my parry, there's my strike, there's his counter. He grabs. Now if he's grabbing, don't forget, if somebody grabs you, they're not likely to let go. If they want to grab you, they're there to hold on to you. So if it was a half-hearted grab and I was able to draw my hand out, well that's good because I'm now in a fighting stance and Gavin is completely open to me on this side. So he's got more, his targets are more available to me than mine are to him. So I've got that advantage anyway. However, in this case, he's grabbed and he's not letting go. So when I now move, I'm going to anchor my elbow to my hip. I'm going to turn towards him into a forward bow. So my elbow's anchoring to my hip and then moving with the center mass of my body. Coupled with that, I'm now pushing the upper part of Gavin's arm into his face, which makes him lean backwards and makes his lower half of his body light, which makes it easier for me to pull him through. My arm of my left arm is now here at his elbow, all ready to apply an arm bar, where we could finish out with something like crossing talons. Okay, so one more time. So throws his punch, there's my movement here, he grabs, a turn, pull through, arm bar, elbow, rip up, and finish out with crossing talons. So we'll do it from this side, so you've got it on both views. There's his punch, there's my movement, there's the grab. Now from here, my movement is this. All right, so I'm turning this into my body and I'm pushing him away. Very similar to what we did before when I could take his knee out for the trip. But if I don't do that, all I'm going to do is pull him through an arm bar. So again, from one more time from this angle, as Gavin moves here, one, he grabs, step back, pull. There's the arm bar already in place, taking him down, elbow, rip, hit, drive, and finish my partner out as with crossing talons. So now we're going to move on to the final variation. Here we're going to disrupt our opponent's ability to think by attacking the control center of the body, which is obviously the head. My partner Luke's volunteered for this one. So, as Luke throws the initial punch, we move and strike. Now here, we're going back to the first variation where Luke throws a punch across towards my face. He's trying to hit me this way with a cross, because this hasn't done had the desired effect to his ribs. So he's able to throw that punch. This goes to the strike, one, bam, he throws his punch. So we move this manner, okay? Now from here, I'm on the outside of his body again. I could push him and sweep like we did before, but what we're going to do is we're going to go straight to the head, okay? Now, when we've got the head, we could, if we wanted to, go into a naked choke, all right? But what I want to do is I want to disrupt my opponent's ability to counter and fight back. So if I put a choke onto him, there's a chance, if he's got maybe sort of like wrestling or jiu-jitsu knowledge, he could get out of it. So I'm going to try disrupt his ability to think and take him to the floor in that manner. So again, so here, 1, 2, 3. All right, so it's very brutal because we don't give our opponent a chance to stop. We just constantly, you okay? We're just constantly moving and striking the head as he's falling backwards. So not only is he trying to contend with falling backwards to the floor, his head's being thrown around and hit from side to side. In some respects, it's like if you had a basketball between your hands and you were throwing a basketball between your hands like that, but that's his head. Although I'm not letting his head go, I'm just moving in this manner. So if I've got Luke's head and he's back here, as I'm moving, it's just constantly moving his head from side to side, not giving him a chance to think of anything other than the disorientation I'm throwing at him. So one more time. From here he throws his punch, 1 and across, 2, here, 1, 2. and finish him out with maybe a knee to the head while he's on the floor. So there's a few little variations for you to try, just staying in the base. I'm not doing any variations in the extension. All those variations are in the first movement of the technique of reversing mace. Thank you very much. Well, thank you once again for joining us on this video from Combat Fusion. I hope you're going to find the information of use to you in your training. Now please remember, if you haven't done so already, think of subscribing to our channel. Don't forget to give this video a share and give it a thumbs up. So I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next video. This is Andy Seaton saying goodbye.